All right. Welcome to the LB's The Lover of Books author chat. If this is your first time live or watching a recording, hello, and thanks for joining. Make sure you click subscribe to my YouTube channel, LB The Lover of Books. I have 42 recorded chats with over 7,600 hours watched. So you're probably going to find a book you've already read and you'll want to go back and hear all what the author has to say. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. And now the really important part, I'm here to introduce to this amazing debut novelist, Amanda. And there were two bios I found, but I liked this one. Amanda is a woman, a daughter, a sister, an auntie, a cat mom, a dog mom, a friend, a descendant of Revolutionary War sailor, of accused witches, and Mi'kmaq ancestors, a Canadian, a traveler, a wine drinker, an admirer of stained glass, a listener of jazz and old country, a reader of books, and a teller of stories. She is an associate professor at the Department of English and Theater at Acadia University in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. She also, if you didn't already know this, she was the Barnes & Noble Discovery Pick winner and the winner of the Carnegie Prize of Excellence in Fiction, among other awards. I mean, this is just a great night for us to have this chat. Welcome so much. Thank you so much for being here, Amanda.
Thank you. And you went to my website.
I did go to your website. I find that those sometimes are better than what the publicists put out because it has that personal touch. And I thought it was fantastic. I couldn't pass it up. All right. I want you to tell us what your connection is to this story because I too am a reader of acknowledgments. And I don't read them until the end. Some people read them before, but I wait till the end. And it said that your father told stories and that you picked these stories up and ran with it. So I'd like to know that connection and how when you heard these, just tell us all the juicy stuff.
Yeah, no problem. I actually love telling this story. So, yeah, my dad and his family, and my grandparents used to load up all 14 kids and load them on the back of the truck, and they would head from the Annapolis Valley, Nova Scotia, which is where we're from and where I am now, and they would drive down to Maine in the 1960s and 70s to pick blueberries. And they did that so they would have money for, my dad always says, for school supplies, which always made him annoyed because he wanted candy and toys. But they had to have school supplies and to help them get through the winter. And a lot of Mi'kmaq people from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island up here in Atlantic Canada all went down and did this every summer. And they did it long before the border was there, long before there was countries. They've always done this. They've gone down to pick berries and come back up. And yeah, so when I started writing seriously, if you can say, he was like, why don't you write about the berry pickers? I said, no, Dad, I write fiction. I don't write nonfiction. I make things up. I use my imagination. He was very convinced. So in August of 2017, we went to Maine, me and my dad, loaded up the Prius and went down on a little road trip and spent 3 days down there. And he showed me the berry fields where they used to pick. And we went to the little cabin where my grandparents used to stay and went along Route 9. And he told me all these crazy stories, which I recorded and I've since lost, unfortunately. But yeah, and while we were down there, the first line of the first chapter, the day that Ruthie went missing, that came to me while I was down there, and I was like, okay, maybe there's something here, and I just started writing from there, and it just kind of went do 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 do.
And so that was 2017, you said?
Yeah, 2017. Yeah.
Okay, so this has been a work in progress. And what, how did you tackle this? This was your first novel, right? So how did you go about it as a new writer?
Well, I originally thought it was just a short story. So I
Okay.
submitted it to like a workshopping thing I had at the Banff Center of Arts and Creativity here in Canada in Alberta, which is a brilliant place to just get your inspiration on. And I presented it as a short story, and they're like, "This is not a short story. This is the first chapter of a novel." I was like, "No, no, I don't know how to write a novel. That's so intimidating. That's so big." And they're like, "No, no, this is a novel." So I actually spent 2 years on the first chapter because I wasn't sure if it was a novel or a short story. So 2 years on that one chapter trying to get it right before I could move on to the idea that I could actually write a novel because it was just a little bit overwhelming to think about it. But yeah, so that's kind of how it started. It wasn't actually meant to be a novel. It was just meant to be a short story, but everybody told me I was wrong. A lot of people told me I was wrong, so that's why this book is out there.
Well, how does it feel being a novelist, not a short story writer?
It's good. I really like once I got into the groove, once I finally got over my trepidation of it not being a short story, and then I could move past that last line. Once I got past that, I was okay, and I could see where the story was going. So then I kind of fell into the inspiration and just went with it. But yeah, it took me 2 years to kind of get over that little hump of this is not a short story, it's a novel, and you can do this. Just put your mind to it. So
Just a little hump, just a little hump.
it's a
Um,
2 year.
well, when you're writing, do you see your chapters as short stories when you're, mentally taking them on? Do you sort of still write like that, or do you now say, "Oh, I'm gonna write a novel"? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it a brain trick for yourself?
I think because I do outline, I'm an outliner. I never stick to my outline, but I do outline. So I think I have a general idea of what I'm going to write in each chapter. It doesn't always go the way it's supposed to, but I kind of do because I know that in this one, at the end of every chapter, you might notice there's a little hook to make you go back to Joe's story or make you go back to Norma's story. And I would do that on purpose. I'd be like, okay, I have to get the writer so they want to come back to Norma after they read a Joe chapter. So I kind of did write them like little short stories, but it was a novel, and I did have it completely outlined. It didn't turn out the way I had anticipated it would, but that's okay because we have to let our creativity go where it goes, right? But yeah, it's kind of like writing a whole bunch of little short stories. I suppose each scene is like an independent little tidbit on its own.
So 2017, you start writing. 2019, is that kind of when the novel part of it began? Ish?
Uh, yeah, I think so because I started writing Joe's second chapter, and then I had this voice in my head saying, because originally it was only Joe's story, it was not Norma. There was no Norma in the story.
Oh,
Yeah, so because in my head, it was just Joe's story. So, but then after I wrote, like, the second chapter of Joe, had this, like, voice in my head saying, "No, no, I wanna tell my own story." I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I should write her story too." But and then I started at the Institute for American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I started my MFA there, and so then I was using my chapters as my assignments because it
mhm.
was my thesis, it was my creative thesis. And I tried to write Joe, Norma, but that didn't work. So I had to write all of Joe's chapters and then leave Joe behind. And then I had to write all of Norma's character and then put them together like a puzzle because I wanted to make sure the voices were distinct. So I couldn't switch on a daily basis from Joe to Norma, Joe to Norma. It didn't work that way. I just had to be in Joe's head the entire time and then in Norma's and then put it all together.
So for readers out there that did not pick up on that hook that you mentioned, can you explain what that is and how you made it work? Because I'm assuming that's especially important because you did write Joe and then write Norma.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the Canadian cover. I won't lie to you, it's not as pretty as the American cover. Shh. Don't tell HarperCollins. But I would just write, I don't know. I just wanted to give the reader like a little bit of suspense so that they want to go back to it. So I would just write at the last paragraph, be like, I have to put something that makes them want to return to see what happens to Norma, and then I have to put something that makes them want to return to Joe. So I can't pick out a piece right now, but I hope I did it successfully. And I've been told I did have a
You
little
did.
hook there for each one. So, because I didn't want them to like read and then be like, oh, well, this is boring. I don't care what happens to Norma anymore. I want them to be like, oh, damn, now I have to keep reading because I have to know what happens to her. And then when they get to Joe, they're like, oh, I have to keep reading because I have to know what happens to Joe. So,
Well, I second that. I definitely think that you were successful, and I'm so glad that you added Norma because it adds a whole nother element and personal touch to it. I think that adds a softness really because Joe is just so angry at the world. And
mm.
I think that Norma, in her own way, balances him for that yin yang part of the story. What, besides Norma saying, "Tell my story," why was it important for you to include Norma?
Um, I think I see a little bit of myself in her a little bit. So it was really good to get that out. Like she struggles with her identity, and as a mixed race woman here in Canada, my mom is not Indigenous, my dad is. So I kind of struggle with that. So it was kind of a little bit therapeutic, to be perfectly honest, to write Norma. Now I haven't experienced all the things that Norma has experienced in the book, but I don't know. And just writing from a female perspective is always refreshing too, being a female. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I don't know, she just came to me like fully fledged and ready to tell her story.
Well, I thought it was fantastic. I do want to talk about race some though, because this is definitely a main element of this book, right? I don't know that this story would have been the same had Ruthie not been an indigenous girl. If she were a blonde, blue-eyed girl, I'm just saying in the news, would this have been treated the same? I don't think so.
No, no, I know that, here in Canada, we talk all the time about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and it's starting to get a lot of press down in the US too, and it's just the fact that a little brown girl can go missing and no one pays attention. And you see the news here in Canada as well, and in the US, if it's a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl that goes missing, it makes national headlines. If it's a child of color, no one knows, no one pays attention. And it still happens here in Canada, and so just the idea that could happen and nobody would do anything. And I get a lot of some people, not a lot of some readers are like, oh, that's so unrealistic, the cops would help. I'm like, would they? And this is 1962, would they? I don't think they would. Even today I am skeptical that they would take it as seriously as they would if it was not an indigenous child, if it's not a brown child. So yeah, so I actually didn't intend to write about that, but I think it just comes out by nature of being who I am and the work I've done for the last 15 years, so.
Well, I think it's an extremely important topic. And, coming into Women's History Month, I appreciated having Norma's voice as well. I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but I can't help myself here. You did mention three women at the end of the book. And I did want to let you talk just a little bit about how important they are to this novel, because I love when women raise up other women. And I really thought that was a fantastic thank you at the end.
Now I'm like, 3? Who were they? I just wrote
Okay.
it I just wrote
Your
an
one
acknowledgement.
is your teacher, which I thought was great because she really saw something in you.
Uh, oh, Ms. Miller back in the
Yes.
yes, yeah, that was grade 11, so I used to write short stories for fun and submit them, and she'd just be like, these are good. You might have a history here. But, it was 1994, 1995 when I was graduating high school, and I'm from rural Nova Scotia. Like, you can't go into the arts, right? I thought about going to art school. I thought about writing, and they're like, you can't do that. And being an Indigenous kid here, no one expected anything from me anyway. And so I was just like, oh, I can't do that. I have to go and I have to make money and I have to have a really good job and blah, 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 blah. So I didn't go, but she always encouraged me and said, this has potential. You have potential here. So that was exciting. And then Christiane Conlon, who I mentioned, who I acknowledge, she was like my first mentor when I started writing, and she wrote this remarkable book called Heave. And in my head, I was like, if someone can write a book about women living in the Annapolis Valley and it can be a national bestseller, could I do that? And I just love the book, and she's such a wonderful she's been with me since 2012 reading all the good, the bad, and the ugly, everything. So, yeah, so I just have so much, love and respect for her, and then I think Katerina Vermette, she's a Métis writer here from Canada. If you haven't read her work, I highly recommend it. The Break, The Strangers, and The Circle just came out last year, and she chose me for in Canada, we have the Writers Trust, the Rising Stars Award, and 5 authors every year are asked to pick someone they know that's a rising star in the literary world, and we get to, like, we get a little tiny amount of money. We get to go to the Banff Center for 2 weeks and just practice our craft. We get mentorship from a writer, and we get to meet with the sponsor of the program, which is Margaret Atwood, so that was nice. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, 2 weeks of just writing and being mentored, like that's huge. I know everybody probably want longer, but and getting to meet Margaret Atwood, that's very awesome. But shout out to all you teachers out there encouraging students
We
to
remember.
follow their dreams, their path, use that brain to spread that creativity, because I thought that was really cool and I wanted to highlight her as well. Um Now I want to get into more of the story. So much of it is about dreams. We start off with it very early on. It continues throughout the novel as a main theme. Why did you decide to use dreams as your avenue?
I think dreams hold memories, especially if we don't want to remember. They sometimes sneak out in dreams. And that's what this is about, right? Is that memories are actually sneaking out as dreams. And it's easy for the adults to dismiss because a child doesn't really understand that. So I wanted that it allows, maybe it's a cheat, I don't know. It allows that connection between the past and the present, to just to have the dreams there, and to have her know that something isn't quite right. She knows it, but she doesn't know why, and it's basically because of the dreams. So I think that's why.
Her mother and father were terrified of these dreams.
Mhm.
They did not want her to think about them, forget them. But then you have this character, Alice,
Right.
who is on the other end of the phone line saying, journal about them, think about them, analyze them.
Yeah.
That's a totally different, thought from what her mother and father are telling her. Why was it important to give Alice that voice for
The
Norma?
the voice of reason?
Yeah, exactly. Reason, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, because so Alice doesn't know about the whole history of it, right? Aunt June never tells her. So she's just trying to help a child. She's just like trying to help a child understand these dreams that scare her and make her cry. And so she says to journal them, to talk about them, to get them out. And that's why the mother's Lenore is so hesitant to send her to Alice in the first place, right? Well, that, and she's a bigot, a bit of a bigot, and doesn't like her Aunt June and Alice's relationship so much. But just like, she's not a very nice person, Lenore. but
She's not.
but she had reasons for doing what she did. They're not good, but they were there. But yeah, so I needed that balance there, somebody who was outside of the situation, who could be someone that Norma could go to. We all have them, right? We all have somebody that we can go to and talk to, whether it's a best friend or somebody. She just needed somebody to make sure that she knew that she wasn't crazy, I guess.
Well, we knew Aunt June knew, right? Because of one, she dragged her across at the rally. She just had conversations. We knew as a reader that she
Mhm.
that she had an idea. What we didn't know is if Alice knew.
Right.
And I thought, oh, please don't let her know, right? But she would almost lead her in a way that I thought, well, gosh, does she know? And she's trying to get her to figure it out herself. But I'm like, I don't want Alice to know. Was that intentional? Because
No,
of okay,
but I like it. I like that you got that out of it, but no, that wasn't intentional.
okay. It really put me on edge. I was like, don't let Alice know because that you really want that trust, right? She's a therapist.
Yes,
It's just without it, it would have been, I think, even worse. And I think that was also Norma's fear, like, please don't let Alice know.
yes,
So
yeah, I mean, I love my therapist, so hey.
how do you think Aunt June plays out in this? I mean, I know we can blame her. Norma obviously blames her.
Yeah,
She's not as culpable as, say, Lenore or the dad, but where does she fit on that scale for you?
it's funny because I love Aunt June,
Mhm.
but I've had a lot of readers say they hate her. They loved her until they found out she knew.
Um,
As soon as I realized she knew, I lost respect for her. Like, why couldn't she change it? And I was like, because she had love too. Like, there's so much, I know there's a lot of sadness in the book, but there's so much love. And maybe it's misguided, completely and utterly misguided love. But she wanted to see her sister happy, right? And she made excuses for herself and for her sister and for Frank, just to make sure that the people she loved were happy. But I love Aunt June. I thought she was great, but a lot of people did not, I found, did not care for her. Once they found out, I was like, "Oh, I never thought about that." It's funny when you're a writer how other people will interpret your work when it gets out into the world. It's so interesting.
you're like, wait, you got what from that? No, I think for me, what I've heard, it's hard to turn off love, right? Like she is loved, and I'll say Aunt June. Aunt June is my go-to, but she is Aunt June.
Aunt June.
She's loved her for so long. She was the escape from her mother. Her
Yes,
mother that house was just so dark and dreary, and she was just held there almost like captive. So when she had Aunt June, it was like she could take a breath, and with Alice. And so for me, I don't think I could say I don't like her because without her, her life, I don't know that she would have had a happy childhood at all.
it
If
would have
it
been
were just
terrible.
Lenore and Frank, I think it would have been completely miserable.
Yeah,
Uh,
it would have been completely and utterly terrible, right? She had this little bit of joy and happiness. It's not that her parents didn't love her. They did in their own really messed up way, but Aunt June was just this peace, I guess, that she could always rely on Aunt June and Alice. So
yeah. So for me, I did enjoy Aunt June and especially Alice, But I can see where they get that, but I think it's when you get into the situation, it would just be hard to turn off completely,
Yeah.
that love that you've been feeling your entire life. Um, all right, so let's go to the other side of the family and let's talk about Joe because, he starts off as the last person to see Ruthie.
Mhm.
And as May says, he holds on to that like a proud stick that that's his badge of honor almost to
Yeah.
wear. But with that comes a lot of guilt, a lot of self abuse for himself. And I found some of his scenes extremely hard to read. And sometimes I really didn't like Joe, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, I had one of my mentors at the Institute for American Indian Arts who was helping me with this book when I was submitting chapters. She looked at me once, she goes, "It's really brave of you to write an entire book of all despicable characters." And I said, "I suppose so, but I don't think they're despicable. They're redemptive in their own way, and Joe's redemptive in his own way, right? He does some terrible things, but, um, I love the philosophy in indigenous culture is that when you do something bad, it's a behavior, it's not you. So indigenous culture, it was more about a forgiving thing. This is something you did that was bad. You are not bad. The action was bad, right? So just the sense of redemption that Joe has, and he does, right? He does have it. Like the only way he knows how to deal with his own violence is to get away from his family, and he thinks it's what's best. So he leaves everybody he loves. And I don't think he wants to, but he just has to, right? He has to go. He has to leave because that's the only way he thinks he can protect the people he loves, even his own daughter.
I don't know that he believes in that theory at the beginning, though.
No, no.
I
And
mean, he truly believes that was it, what do you say, soured, or what was the term?
yeah, sour.
Soured. Okay.
Sour, something sour.
And he really believed that he was just poison. And he talks about the poison in his body. I mean, there's definitely that theme of sour poison within side of Joe. He talks about seeing red hot. I mean, his anger takes him over. So is it the woman in the field that oh, here's my cat trying to get in my lap. Um the woman in the field, I feel like that was the change for him
Yes.
in his mind when he sees behavior versus himself.
Yeah, and because he could speak to someone who is completely nothing to do with anything he's ever known, right? She's a complete stranger in a field, but she had the connection that she was indigenous and could he felt more comfortable talking to her, right? And expressing himself. So I think that is what helped. She had to be completely removed from everything he'd ever done. And he could just feel like he could unburden himself and find some from solace. I love the little tail coming across the screen.
That's Cleopatra. Cleo for short. She rules the house. Okay. And this may be far off, but is she real? The woman in the field. Is she a real person, or is she what Joe needed to hear?
Here's the funny thing, I've never been asked that before, and I was like, "It's funny that no one's ever asked me that," because when I first started writing her, she was a ghost. So, to be honest, I don't know if she's real or not.
Well, she
Um,
doesn't have a name, right? I mean, I was trying to remember if she had a name. I couldn't remember one.
no, she wouldn't give her name. She's like, "You don't need to know my name," like,
Right.
and he
And
just
either encounter, right? I mean, not when he first met her, or then when he goes back to
yeah,
her.
yeah.
We never get a name.
So
No
I
one ever sees him with her. There's never a third person coming into the scene.
no.
I love that that's ambiguous. You're not quite gonna either give it to me or not sure, leave it open
Yeah,
for
let
thought.
the beauty of writing in my like, I'm a reader, I love reading, and if a book explains everything to me, I lose interest really quickly. If there's no room for my own imagination to take hold, I don't really care for a book, so if people are like, "Ooh, I wonder if it's a ghost or not," and they're using their imagination when they're reading my book, I love that, that's so amazing.
And I didn't ever picture it as a ghost. I wondered if it was something more cultural
Mm,
within the Native American thought of, like how she says, when I normally see people, they're going out into the woods. Like, in other words, they're going to go kill themselves.
yes, yeah.
And it's almost like she was that last step for him before he was going to take worse action. And then I don't know, I wondered if there was something more with that.
Huh.
I found
I
it
know
fascinating. I
that.
love those scenes.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you got that out of that 'cause, that's not how I write it, but That's a very interesting. If I was going to teach that, I would ask my students about that.
Oh, new class, people, sign up for her class.
Yeah,
Um, no,
everybody asked me if I'll teach my own book. I was like, no, that's weird.
it might be, but I would love to take, I would sign up, I will say. Um, and then, so we have this first encounter where she basically gives him reason. She
Yes.
gives him a point of sanity almost. But then the next time it's completely different. It's him looking for her, not happening on her. He's
Yeah.
he's intentionally looking, and he's there specifically to say thank you.
Yeah.
So why did you want it to come full circle and come back to her?
Because I think it's another turning point. I think she's like the turning point, right? Because when he leaves her house, he intends to go back to the camps, but he doesn't. He turns and heads home.
Mhm.
Of course, by the time he gets too closer to home, he chickens out and heads back down to Maine. But it's like a turning point in his life. Like she's kind of like the hinges that keep him going.
Yeah. I just love all of that. Um, all right. So we have someone said also they had mixed feelings about Aunt June, and loyalties can transform into morally gray behaviors. Yes, Mary Ann, totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Trauma makers, people act out in self-destructive ways. And so I want to talk about that when Mary Ann brings that up too. Self-destructive behavior. One, we know alcohol is a major issue for Joe.
Mhm.
But yet he continues to use it. At times he says, no, I want to stop. So I want to talk about that with alcohol abuse with you, why you chose that and why that's an issue for Joe.
I think it's alcohol abuse is in every family. Everybody can relate to it. And it is the demon that's easiest to get your hands on, I guess. So it just made sense that would be an issue that people could probably understand or relate to because we all have it in our family somewhere. I'm assuming. I know we
Oh,
do.
I definitely, I think that it's definitely prevalent if people are, they're probably not opening their eyes if they think it's not
Yeah,
somewhere in their
and
family.
I don't think Joe would have reacted the way he did. Like his sober self wouldn't have been as terrible as he acted. Like there had to be something that set him off, and I think that is just I don't know. I guess it's just something everybody knows and can relate to that they know that can happen with alcohol, that it can elicit violence, it can elicit running away, it can elicit a whole bunch of terrible things.
Well, and that's not the only thing that sets him off. I mean, losing his brother and seeing his brother killed
Mhm.
really did a number on him and creates a very angry person that is so bottled up. Almost wish he had an Alice to speak to, but he didn't. And
Yep.
instead, it just stayed inside that poison that he talks about. And so for me, I think that, and that's the scene I was talking about when he is physically abusive to his wife was
Mhm.
extremely hard to read. Um, why did you decide to have Joe go that far in this novel?
It's funny when people ask me, "Well, why did you decide?" I'm like, "I don't know if I did." It was just
Just
the
happened.
it just does. It really does. Like
So
I
that
said,
wasn't in the outline.
wasn't in the outline, and it's just like this is what has to happen. This is how this story goes. This is Joe's story, and I always say stories exist in like some creative ether out there, right? And they just fall down, and I was lucky enough to catch this story and be able to tell it, but I don't actually know where a lot of it comes from. It's just this creative vibe that just comes out when I'm sitting in front of a blank screen.
Is that a hard scene for you to write?
Oh,
Because
yeah. Yeah, of course. It's upset. There's a couple of really upsetting scenes that were hard to write, and you just have to write it and then you just have to shut down the computer and walk away from it for a while and then come back later.
Marianne also wants to follow up, and she said she thought Joe's feelings of guilt and shame also led to the self-hatred and the rage.
Oh yeah, 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 completely. Of course.
All right. So let's keep moving along. We talked about forgiveness, that was also a theme in this book.
Mhm.
So let's jump to the end. The mother says she hopes to be able to forgive Norma's parents. Do you think
Mhm.
that's possible? I was thinking about that. I was like, could I really do that? I'm not sure.
I don't
Um,
think so. But she's a religious person and she really does, right?
yeah.
She's a person of faith, so forgiveness is part of that and she really wants to, but I
Mhm.
think she knows that she never could. That's why she says she hopes she can, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big ask. It is a
Yeah.
big ask.
Huge. Yeah.
Um, when we, I keep saying these names, Norma, Alice, Joe, are any of these names important to you? Like, how did you come up with the names of your characters in the book? Any significance?
Joe is my grandpa.
Okay.
So Joe, Chief Joseph Peters of Cat First Nation, he was my grandpa, and I loved him very much. And he was the one who used to load up the entire family and take them down to pick berries. And then he'd drive back to New Brunswick and get more pickers and bring them back. And yes, and his dad was named Lewis. So Joe's dad is named Lewis in the book. So, and just funny enough, Cora and Leah are two of my best friends from high school. And I didn't intend to name them after them. Of course, there's six of us that were a clique and we still talk all the time. They're like, where are we? And I was like, it's just because in my head, I was thinking, what do these people look like? And I was like,
Right.
oh, she looks like Cora. And I just threw that in there as a placer, but it just stuck.
It just
So,
stuck.
yeah, just Cora and Leah were two of my friends from high school. And Joe is my grandpa, and Lewis, who I never met because he died in before I was born, but my great grandpa. So I just put that in there, and my dad was kind of like, "Oh, that's what he said." He was very happy with that.
Oh, that's really sweet. That's special. I love that. Um, so when we're talking about love for this family, she says when they ask her were you loved, she says, I was taken care of. I
Hmm.
thought that was very much a distinction between love. And it seemed like within minutes of meeting her mother, she felt love.
Yeah.
Almost, I mean, to me, it felt like it was almost instantaneous. That hug happened, the smells, everything brought it in. It was like night and day
Mhm.
from her home to to this small house.
Yeah, I think when you've been like suffocated so much as she had, and then you come into this loving family who've been devastated, yes, but they're still loving and caring, and they just welcomed her so immediately, like she had never been gone, and she just felt like she immediately belonged. And wouldn't that be a wonderful feeling for someone in their 50s who never felt like they belonged to suddenly know that this is where I am, this is who I am. So yeah.
Well, she really isolated herself in so many ways. One, she, not blamed, but she did not want to have the same reactions her mother had.
Yes,
So
yes.
she, asked for a divorce and set up a situation where I think she knew that she would get a divorce. But if she says, I'm not going to have children, and he says, I want children, was that an intentional isolation move on Norma's part?
I don't think it was. I think in deep down, she probably wanted him to say, "Okay, we can not have kids."
Mhm.
But yeah, she was always had it in the back of her head, but she just knew that she couldn't do it. She didn't want to see those ghost faces in her children.
Yeah, that was chill bumps. Because she'd already lived through that once,
Yes,
being
yeah.
on the opposite end of it. Um, when you did talk about the book being, well, here, I'll ask Tommy's question. She can't be here tonight. And she says, Berry Pickers is one of the more quietly devastating novels I've read, partly because of the lives lived and spent during the 50-year lie. Why
Mm.
so long for the truth? Did you have the reunion earlier at any point?
No, no, the reunion was after I decided, well, after people decided for me that this was a novel, not a short story.
Yes. Yes, you were convinced.
Yeah, and the reunion was like I knew exactly when it was gonna happen. I was like, done. And then I just wrote the in between. Like I didn't write it, but I just knew in my head that this is how it was gonna be. So no, I never had anything different than the ending of how it turned out.
So, as a reader, it wasn't a mystery either, because in the description somewhere it says 5 decades or 50
Mm.
years. Was that also intentional? Because I thought in my head, I could have been like, oh, is this the moment they're going to meet? Oh, is this the moment? But really, I start counting it up. No, she's not 50 yet. She can't, it's not happening. Was that also intentional to kind of give the reader a little bit of breath
Oh,
or make it
you'd
so
have to ask the publishers about that one. They do that writing.
that's almost a good telltale there.
Yeah, that's the marketing department.
Exactly. So you mentioned, and I'm going back because you said this at the beginning, that this is not what you outlined. How
No.
different is it from what you originally envisioned?
Uh, the beginning and the end are the same. It's the in between that went through multiple changes. There's even a whole chapter, which I'm not gonna tell you which one, so don't ask, that wasn't there when I submitted to my publisher, and she said, "You realize you've lost the plot, you need to bring it back." I was like, "Oh, okay, yes, yes, yes." So you can lose a plot, that's a real thing. So I was like, "Okay," and I thought about it for about 2 weeks, and then it just of course, it came to me. I'm assuming it came to me at 3 o'clock in the morning or in the shower, because that's when all my ideas come to me. And then I just got up and I just wrote the chapter, like, in a day, and I was like, "Do, do, 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 there it is, there it came to me," so and plopped it down in the middle. So then I had to do some rearranging because I had a Joe Norma, but
Yeah.
it changed. The beginning and the end are the same. It didn't have a prologue at the very beginning either. That was something I added at the very end. Because I was told people don't do prologues anymore. I'm like, I want a prologue. I'm gonna stick to my guns.
Well, good. I like a prologue. I like
Yeah.
a good prologue.
So
Somebody did mention maybe your girlfriends from high school won't be upset because you hopefully have more books coming out. So potential names, so we're hoping about that. And
yeah.
someone did ask, let me get back to the very beginning. Tanya, since this Berry Pickers was your first novel, what plans do you have for your next novel? I really enjoy hearing how you planned the book out.
Oh, well, I have a short story collection coming out in Canada in August, in the US in January. And the short stories I actually wrote before and during the Berry Pickers. So they're kind of like, I call them my training wheels for writing the novel. And then I do have a new novel. I have a first draft, but I don't talk about it. And the
Okay.
reason being is that I've started a few, and that as soon as I talk about it out loud to people, the story goes away. It's like a story. It feels like I betrayed them or something and leaves me. So
You just need to get back in the shower.
yeah.
Well, and
I
I think your short story collection is the way to say, are y'all sure? I really like writing short stories here, people. Don't put baby in a corner.
Oh, but I do have one. I do have a first draft, which I wrote last January, and I haven't gotten back to it yet, just because of promotion and then the teaching job. And so I've actually, my birthday's this month, so I've taken like a long weekend, and I've rented an Airbnb out on the ocean with a hot tub, and I'm just gonna like sit there and I'm gonna write for 4 days and go in the hot tub, and yeah, I'm just gonna do that and see if I can get back into the novel and try to make it what I want it to be.
Well, the LBs here want to wish you a happy early birthday, and we hope that that hot tub has the effect of a hot shower, and you can just all those ideas will come down from the ether that just
Yeah.
right there to you. So that's exciting and good self care. So way to go. Um, I will also ask you about that novel. So the first one, I'm assuming you wrote through quarantine, through COVID.
Yeah, a lot, most of it, yes.
Most
Yeah.
of it. Have you found, and I'm not asking, you don't have to tell me content, but have you found this to be a different writing process than what you had back then? And is it better, different, worse? Like,
Well, it's different because I can leave my house now, right? Like I can go and do things. So when I come up against like, oh, what am I going to do with this? And I don't know, I'm like, oh, I'll just go somewhere else. I'll go for a walk or I'll go to dinner. Like I can get away. And
mhm,
my job is now outside of my house. Even when I was in quarantine, I was working from home
right.
before that. So I never left my home. And I'm a homebody. I love my home. I hardly ever leave it. But I do when I'm forced to stay here for months and months at a time, I want to get out. So I think it's just a different feeling, I guess. And I don't have the fact that it was my thesis, right? So I don't
Yeah.
have deadlines on me. I can just write what I want. And I'm a person who works well with deadlines. So I'm like, oh, I just wish somebody would give me a deadline. So I
If
could,
you need me to send you emails with deadlines, I will, to just let me know.
okay.
No, seriously though, we're excited. If you will, when you can talk about it, please let me know. I keep groups open on Facebook and Instagram, and I will definitely share that out to people once you have something that you would like to share, and that'll get everybody excited about your
Okay.
next novel.
I'm
So
excited about it. So I am. I just it's like the first draft is just like idea dump, right? It's
yeah,
just literally and it's not good. It's like and then she did this and then they did this and then they went there. So it's now it's making it into a novel. The ideas are on page. Now I have to actually create the story and the words and put the words there. So
excellent. Well, we're excited for it.
isn't this cover gorgeous?
Yes.
They did such a good job. Like, whoa, I was
I
so
know. I was going to ask you, but you already answered that how much you loved this cover versus the Canadian cover. Yeah.
and the UK cover is a little bit different as
You
well.
have it there or no?
I have it up there somewhere, but I'm in my pajamas from here down.
Y'all see, I knew that, but I wasn't going to tell. My mouth was shut, but now they all know. So we're
Now
all
everybody
at the
knows.
slumber party. Okay. And I think I told her, I said, maybe we should have a slumber party author chat one time. All right. So people can ask questions while they're getting their questions together. I'm going to ask you my infamous rapid fire questions. So just straight what you think. Okay. Um, paperback or hardcover?
Hardcover.
Morning bird or night owl?
Morning.
Your favorite jazz singer?
Matte dusk.
Favorite wine?
Louis Latour Pinot Noir and Louis Latour Chardonnay, depending on the season.
Very nice. And your favorite country song?
Oh, that's hard.
I know.
Yes,
But
Shame Earth Brooks.
oh, that's a classic. Love
Mhm.
it. I did
Yeah.
see him sing that in concert. Really good. Maine or Nova Scotia?
Nova Scotia.
I
It's more
love that the
cool.
narrative said sorry. And it brought me back to my Anna Green Gables days when I, for a full month, would say sorry. Because,
Sorry.
yes, I love it. All right, last one. And this is very important. What would be the karaoke song you sang at Alice's wake? Do you have a go-to karaoke song?
I have a go-to music night song. So my family, we all get together, we have music nights, and we all
Okay.
take a turn, and it's Wilson Phillips, Hold On.
Hold That's the best.
We start every music night with that one.
Yeah.
That's my song. I'd have to say that would probably be the one I'd sing at karaoke.
My family appreciates when I lip sync and I don't actually sing. So there's that too. All right, people. Who here has a question to ask Amanda? I would love for you to raise your hand and ask. If not, I think there are some questions in the chat box. Yes, Mary Ann, I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you. Go ahead.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you for being with us tonight. I so enjoyed reading your book. I guess just some thoughts, and I'm wondering if you could speak to the notion of Ruthie's kind of losing her identity, right? As a part of as a result of being kidnapped, right? So, and we see over time that she's, through her dreams, starts to regain some of these pieces that she's lost. And I guess I'm wondering if Ruthie is a metaphor for all the things that the First Nations, Indigenous people have lost due to assimilation and colonization. And just wonder if you could speak to that. Or whether I'm just, imagining things over here.
Oh, not at all. People ask me that, like, is Ruthie representative of what colonization has done to Indigenous people in Turtle Island? And I think I always say I didn't intend to write it that way. I think it's a product of the fact that of who I am and and I worked in my own community. I worked for 8 years in my own community of Bluescat First Nation, and then before that, I worked in health policy for Atlantic First Nations for all of the. So I've been to residential school hearings, like I've listened to the residential school survivors. I've cried with them. I've cried and they've comforted me, which is so wrong, but that's the way they're the strongest people in the world, right? So I think and I know people from the 60s scoop, and I know folks who've had their mothers, their sisters gone missing. And I think just because of who I am and the work I've done, it just came about naturally that I talked about that, and that became the story. I don't think I intended to do that. Maybe I did subconsciously.
The power of the collective unconscious, right?
Yes, exactly.
It comes out.
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
great question, Mary Ann. All right, who else has a question? I will say, to follow up with that, with the loss of culture and language. You talk about these characters, they know a few words, but not so much as passed down. So what are your thoughts on that? And have you tried to reconcile that with your own tribe?
Yeah, it's hard. Like in my community, there are no speakers. There are no Mi'kmaq speakers.
Mhm.
My sister, her partner is from a different community up in Cape Breton, and their speaker, and he's a speaker. He speaks the language, and we're trying to rebuild it back in our community. But it's really hard when you've not been raised in it, and such a complex language, right? It's a verb-based language. The words are very long. Pronunciation is completely different. Sorry, my dog is annoying me right now. It's like trying to get it all my attention.
That's fun.
So yeah, a lot of us are trying to learn. I can remember my birds for some reason, but
Mm.
the ones in the book are the ones that I know, that every Mi'kmaq knows, regardless of whether you speak the language. You know tea and you know potato. You just know them. Beat away and double W. You just gotta know them. So yeah, and it's just kind of a funny. I like the Mi'kmaq people read it. They're like, that's so funny because you do have to know tea and you do have to know potato, just because they're part of the culture. So
Well,
yeah, we're trying to bring it back, but it has largely been lost in this part of Nova Scotia.
well, for Ruthie, that was one of her main memories was potatoes, that she could smell it, and I loved that the sense of smell is what brought her back the most. You know,
Mhm.
of our senses for her, that was her true one of her real ties to her family, and I thought that was really cool.
This
Um,
sense of smell is like the strongest sense, right? To bring back memories. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense that way.
Sometimes sound as well, though, like when I hear that Garth Brooks Shameless song, it can bring me right back. I think we're the exact same age, so I'm like right there with you.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought that was interesting is when they said, he we're talking about Joe. He did not come back, and it was because I think something like lost souls have to find their way back. Does that
Mhm.
also apply to Ruthie? Because she finds her way back. Do you consider her also a lost soul?
I think so, but in a different way. Like he's a lost, like a true lost soul. She doesn't know she's lost until towards the end. So then she does find her way. But I think his is more of a dramatic, long dealing with everything, whereas she just comes to the realization when her mom is dying that she's lost. She's kind of always known it, but it's just
Yeah.
like boom, there it is. Now everything's been confirmed, and now I have to find where I'm from.
Well, she always knew she was not always, but she figured out she's a
Yeah,
smart girl. She
yeah,
was adopted. Why do you think Aunt June took it the extra step? Because she could have just left it at
yeah.
your adopted, but she didn't. She said, your mother, I can't believe your mother did this. Now I have to tell you. So why did she? I mean, because she really could have lost Norma at that point.
Yeah.
Why do you think she told her?
I think years and years of just living that lie and that guilt, and she didn't have to do anymore. She didn't have to face her sister anymore, and she could tell the truth. And she loves Norma, right? She's
Mhm.
probably the one person in the world who just like in that family who completely loved her and would do anything for her. So I think she just knew that she couldn't tell a lie anymore.
All right, I'm jumping ship again. Barbara Arnold. She says, I spend a lot of time in Cape. Is it Breton? I know you mentioned your brother-in-law
Hey,
near
Breton. Okay.
Chitty
Yeah.
Camp. Have you spent time there?
I have good friends from Inverness, so yeah, I've been up to Chetty Camp, and I've done the trail a couple times, of course. But yeah, I have some friends from Inverness, and my brother-in-law is from Wagelma First Nation, so he's from up there. And I work my previous work for years and years has been working with all the First Nations communities in Atlantic Canada. So I spent a lot of time in the communities up there in Cape Breton. So yeah, Chetty Camp is really nice. It's French. It's a French community, but yeah, really gorgeous, right on the water. Mm.
Very pretty. All right, Tommy had another question I'm going to ask on her behalf. As a child, I loved the face on the milk carton, the story of a kidnapped girl who solves her own kidnapping and the spill out that followed with both families. The brief similarities in your novel reminded me of a book I devoured as a kid, much like I devoured this one. Was the scene where her aunt pauses, unsure of what to call her in the first draft?
Unsure of what to call her.
Remember, towards the end, I think it was when she finds out
Yeah.
she's Ruthie and she says, like, she was going to say Norma, and then she pauses, and then she finally says, you can call me Norma. That.
Yeah. Yeah. That was always there. Yeah, that was always there. It's just her reckoning of coming back to herself, I think. Not a reckoning, that's the wrong word. Her realization of who she is and coming back into herself for after like so many years of being 50 years of not being who she really was.
Yeah. And her birthday is the day she was kidnapped. Like,
Yeah. which is
Well,
also my best friend's birthday in real life. So I stuck that in there.
there's another similar. What else are you not telling us? What else is in this book that I need to know about?
My family, it's funny, they picked it on the my mom's family picked it on the pink peppermints. Alice has pink peppermints. My grandma always had pink peppermints, like always. So they're like, "Oh, that's Graham." I was like, "Yeah, that's Graham."
Oh, that's adorable. I love it. I
But
love it.
little tiny things like that in there to just honor the people I love.
That's so sweet. Absolutely love it. Um,
Sorry,
I'm telling
oh,
you,
crazy.
can join us if she wants to. I was going to ask because you've mentioned a few phrases and you talked about language coming back. Are there any phrases? I would just love to hear what it sounds like because we hear just a few words of, the language because they don't speak it.
Right.
But you're from the same tribe. So are there anything more that you can give us just so that we can hear it to remember?
I know some things like Waliatsupuk means good morning. Walalan means thank you to one person. Walalio means thank you to all of you. Um, Bisqua, sit down. That one's for my dog. I guess it beat away. The Jalasi means welcome. Yeah, I know my birds, so like DDS, Jipjuage. Funny enough, chickadee is chickadee.
So we took that from your language.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I'm slowly learning, but I find it really difficult. And I'm actually trying to learn Italian right now because me and my sisters are going to Italy next year. So
well, I will say our last author who was here is Charmaine Wilkerson for Black Cake, and she lives in Rome.
oh,
So I will send you her address because I know she loves when authors come to visit.
oh,
So,
fantastic.
um, and she speaks Italian, pretty fluently, I think. So she would be a nice person to have along, while you're to say hello to while you're in Rome. What do you, as this being your first novel, what is the most memorable thing that's happened along this journey for you? Like, is there anything that really stands out that you're like, I will never forget this moment?
I think it was, oh, Holly, stop it. Sorry. She's being so bad. I think it was like when I went down to do my launch in Maine, my dad and I went together and we drove the same berry fields that inspired the book. So he went down again and we were like, and he was telling the exact same stories as he does. So I think that was really nice, just like him and I doing our thing and like 5 years later after he inspired the book and him coming with me. And it was so amazing to do like my thing. So I read from the book and I answered the questions. And then everybody in the audience went right towards him and they wanted to hear real stories. So
Mhm.
and now my dad like carries my book with him everywhere and tells everybody about it. So I think that's, and I was nominated for the Atwood Gibson Award this year from the Writers Trust of Canada. And I took him to Toronto with me, so that was fun. He got to hang out with like Emma Donahue and all that. He had no idea who anybody was, and I was just like starstruck. So
You're
yeah.
like mouth dropped, like,
Mhm. Yeah, and he's like, I'm like, Dad, do you know who you're talking to? He's like, no, that's Emma Donahue. He's like, I don't know who that is. So
she's
yeah.
really nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's nice that my dad is getting yeah, he is a proud papa. So it's kind of nice that, and him and I just did an interview for a local paper that came out this week and we did it together talking about this. So yeah.
That's really cool, and that's neat too. I love that your local community is behind you and supporting you, and now you have so many fans here that are just so excited to see what you do next. I will also ask, and I ask this of all authors, and I'm sorry your brain's probably spent, but can you give us any book recommendations so that these readers can maybe pick up something that you've loved?
Okay, so I'm reading this right now.
Oh, love Tommy Orange.
Yes. So Tommy Orange, if you haven't read There, you do not know what you're missing. So this is his new one, came out Tuesday. Or yeah, Tuesday. I'm halfway through it. So there's that one. I have a book lover's diary. Do you guys have book lover's diaries? I record like every book. This is my second one. And I've done it since I was like 18, but I started when I was like 25. So I think I've missed a lot.
Okay,
So
wait. So can we see it? Like, are you just writing title or what do you put in your book diary? Or is this
both.
highly
So
secret?
it's not,
Formas don't read thoughts.
these are like titles. This is my second one, so I filled up the other one. The other one has quotes and stuff, but as I get older, I do less of that. I
Okay.
sneeze now. Excuse me.
Bless
But
you. How would we say that in Mi'kmaq?
I don't know.
We'll have to learn that one. All
I'm
right,
gonna
keep going.
learn that one. Some books I've read recently that I really, really loved. Brown Girls by Daphne Palasi Andreas. I don't know if you've read that.
No, I
Um,
don't think you
I
have.
listened to it and on audio, and the story is just phenomenal. The writing is amazing. It's written in the second person, and it's just like it's so good. In the Upper Country by Kai Thomas. I'm just looking. There's so many good ones. I bought one for based on the cover, which people tell me they've done with the berry picker. So that was Wayward by Amelia Hart.
Ooh, that's a pretty cover. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty cover. So I read that and that was fun. I don't know. There's just so many. When We Were Sisters by Fatima Ashgar is absolutely brilliant. Anything by Emily St. John Mandel, Cherie Demeline. Um, there's just so many. There's a Cormac McCarthy randomly stuck in there.
Ooh,
Gumder, Katerina Vermette, Morgan Talty. He has a new one coming out in May.
okay.
And I'm coming down actually to Maine in May to do his launch with him. So that's going to be fun. So.
All right. If you're close to Maine, look her up and see her bring those books. I'm sure she'd love to sign the berry pickers as well. You know, I just have had the best time tonight. Amanda, thank you so much for being here. Readers, thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for having your cameras on. Thank you to your pets, Amanda, for their lovely visits as well. Please make sure to check out her Instagram, her website, and hopefully we'll see some more updates on what she's writing when she's ready. And then if y'all can, like I said before, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would love for that. I will try to get this recording up very quickly. But I just thank y'all so much. You know, the LBs is here for recommendations, for reviews, and of course, for more author chats. Coming up in, I guess, a couple of weeks, we're going to have Kristen Harmel for The Paris Daughter. Y'all are going to definitely want to hear about this World War II book. She's a fantastic person as well, and I can't wait to talk to her. So please join us for that. It's on a Monday, I think March 25th, if I'm not, yep, March 25th. So I hope y'all can join then. Coming up after that, we have lots of great chats, about 2 to 3 a month. So find out what's coming up, get those library books on hold or purchases, and I will see y'all soon. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great night. And you can go to bed now, Amanda. It's bedtime. We know you're an early riser. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was
Had
great.
such a great time. Bye, everybody.